Hi, Murray.
Hi, how are you, Rena?
Good, good. Always a pleasure catching up with you, Murray. And I'm so grateful that we've got some really engaged sales leaders like yourself that has followed our journey at Smart Talent Group, and we've
Mhm.
worked with you on a number of occasions. So I'm really grateful uh, to you for coming on board and being very open and transparent about your journey as a candidate. So
Mhm.
just a little bit about Murray. I probably don't want to say too much because I want him to share a little bit about his amazing career in sales. But Murray's got over 20 years of experience working across commercial, operational, and general management roles across diverse industries. And I think his core focus has always been within corporate learning, events, higher education, and more recently in the financial services space. Um, he's had various extensive experience developing and executing business strategy, driving sales. He's one of the strongest sales leaders I've had the privilege knowing because he's got some really strong leadership principles and very sound understanding of what it takes to be a great sales leader. Murray more recently uh, was on the job market. We've had numerous conversations, and he's recently secured a role. And as a job seeker, I've asked him to come on board today to share a little bit about his journey there. But over to you, Murray. If you just want to share a little bit about, you know, your biggest achievements as a sales leader, what's kept you in sales, and maybe a short snippet about your background as a sales leader. That'll be great.
Yeah, thanks, Rena. Thanks so much for having me here today. It's a real privilege to be called out and to be asked to come on here and help you with your podcast series. Look, you've said a lot about me. Look, I've got a pretty strong background in both general management and sales leadership, but my career actually started in marketing many years ago, which I think it gives me a little bit of an advantage when you think about sales leadership because working so closely and collaboratively across different diverse teams within an organization, in particular marketing, who can be one of your biggest enablers as a salesperson, is incredibly important. As you said, I sort of have a bit of a diverse background across a number of different industries. Started out in events and B2B and B2C events in corporate training and exhibitions and conferences. Made the transition across to academic publishing, where I was the director for a global publishing organization that was
Mhm.
selling to universities. Did a couple of years in financial services as a sales director, and have now found myself back in higher education as the executive general manager of a higher education college. And look, as far as think about some of the successes I've had in the past, I've grown businesses quite significantly. I've led teams that have really built businesses and launched new products, big double-digit growth, multi-million dollar organizations, $200 million plus budgets, working on both big enterprise and smaller B2C sales. I've kind of done a little bit of everything. But yeah, look, I think if I could put a finger on the kinds of successes that I've had as a sales leader, it's really around that building of really strong sales culture, making sure that your team are equipped and enabled and really empowered to deliver on their sales objectives, and then working collaboratively across our customer group, across our internal stakeholder group to deliver everything that we can.
Mhm, mhm. I think it's been, and I forgot to mention that one of your biggest strengths as a sales leader is that you understand the marketing function, and
Yes.
you've led and you've been a marketing leader
Mm.
and sales, and they go hand in hand. So that's a real strength you don't see in many sales leaders because you can see that quite siloed, that the two
Mhm.
the two functions operate and have their own objectives. So having that knowledge and being the link to being able to get them to work collaboratively is a real, I think, one of your biggest strengths as a sales leader. So I forgot to mention that, but that's definitely something I see as a massive strength when I'm recruiting for sales leaders, you know. Um, But yeah, Murray, I mean, you've recently secured your new role. How's that going?
Look, it's great. Yeah, it's back in the education industry, which is really exciting, and it's leading a high performance team and a business that's got so much potential for growth with a little bit of investment over the next couple of years. And we've had a really strong first quarter in both our B2C and our B2B offering, and the pipeline's looking really strong. We're working with some amazing customers where we've got a great pipeline of both sales and content and technology delivery over the next 6 to 12 months. So it's been a really great, really strong start.
Wow, because I think they've got the right person in the seat then. Because I mean, you seem to be quite buzzed about the role and you're smashing targets, and I'm really glad that you've got a real positive spin around where the business is headed, because there's not many that will be sharing the same sentiment as you. So I like that, because that's actually great, where there, if you're doing something right, you're going to get those results, and you've gone in with a different spin on things. I think your understanding of that whole higher education, and just your understanding of training courses and that whole space is something that can be looked at as a real strength, because it's quite a niche. Even your background at what was the role that you had where you were general
Or Smart Group.
Was it Informer? No, not Smart Group. It was after Informer.
Elsevier.
Yes, that's that was you kind of hit some really great numbers there, and you grew the business, and you were part of that journey. So you're able to use all of that knowledge and bring that together to build and follow the vision, follow vision for this business. So I think that's massive.
Yes.
And you don't see that, because you see a lot of sales leaders in this space. They either move out and do something completely different. And I've seen a lot of transition from, education and training to tech. And there's been that's been quite a line. So I think sticking with what you know and actually building a career around that is a real strength, because you can add a lot of value in those senior leadership roles, and that's where I think your current business has probably seen a lot of value.
Well, interestingly, you think about education as being quite a traditional market and an industry, and it absolutely is. But since COVID, there's been so much change in the way that education is delivered and developed, and it's now that it's much of a technology sale in B2Bs in particular, because you're selling in the platform, you're selling in the learning outcomes, you're selling in the learner experience and the student experience, and it's almost a strong benefit to have that kind of technology enterprise level sales experience in that traditional market. And again, our success that we've had this first quarter is partly because of that, because it's changing that mindset. It's changing the way that we take the products to market. It's changing the way we talk about it. It's thinking more about it as a solution, solution for a client or for a customer, rather than just a training course. It's really about changing the narrative for our customers.
No, that's awesome. No, I think I mean, you've obviously gone into this new role. How long has it been?
Just over 5 months now.
Just around 5 months. But I know we've spoken on numerous occasions towards the latter bit of 2020.
23 last year.
2023. Jesus.
It feels like so long ago.
I know it does, doesn't it? Oh God. But I know we've spoken, and when you finished up with the Smart Group, you did some amazing things there, and you shared your journey and decided it was time to move on. We had quite a few conversations around the market at the time. The whole purpose of this podcast series is to really connect with our candidates out there, because I, as a recruiter, I think we've got a duty of care to kind of give our candidates some perspective around the market, and some awareness around, the challenges that even fantastic candidates like yourself have faced, and just really resonate with what they're going through. Because what I'm seeing at the moment as a sales recruiter is over 150 applications for each role within, and it could be either your junior entry level roles to your enterprise sales roles. The volume of candidates out there is definitely extensive, and it's a surplus to the role, so that you can't even balance them out, and that's putting candidates in a really challenging position. Businesses are becoming a lot more pickier with the profile of candidates they're picking. The salaries changing. So I just wanted to give us some insight to the challenges you faced as a candidate yourself, and maybe just connect with some of the candidates out there.
Yeah, look, the first thing that I'll say is, for people that are currently looking for a job and may have been for a couple of months, is first of all, don't give up, because it may take some time, as it did for me. I think I took 2 months off just to reset and recharge my batteries and spend a bit of time with the kids when I left my last role. And then I spent the next sort of 3 or 4 months, really actively looking at. And it would be, and I know for myself, I'm a very positive person, but I know that for some people, it could be quite a challenging situation, both mentally, emotionally, and also financially, right? So my first message would be, don't give up, because there will be light at the end of the tunnel. Look, if I think back to my journey, it went through a couple of different stages for me. Because I wasn't initially looking at first, I was really lackadaisical, and I updated my resume, and I did a little bit of stuff around my cover note, and read a couple of blogs, and spoke to some recruiters, including yourself. And really, I started to put my feelers out there. That was the big thing for me, is just using my network, talking to people, figuring out the sort of industries I wanted to go into and test with. And then after a couple of months of me having some time off, I really started actively looking at it. And I started with the whole spray and pray approach, right? So I'd go onto LinkedIn or to Seek, and I'd apply for 10 or 15 relevant jobs, relevant jobs in a day, and would never get a response back, or wouldn't get any kind of feedback or anything like that. So it was quite demoralizing, I think, as a candidate to go through that. And in particular for me personally, because I'd never spent any time out of the market looking for a job before. I'd always left an organization, moved straight into another role, because I was lucky from that point of view that whenever I was looking for a role, it was quite a strong market. Look, it was quite frustrating, to be honest, because if I think about my experience and my resume, it's quite strong, right? I've worked for great global organizations. I've got good education. I've done some amazing things from a personal, from a business point of view. So it was really frustrating to get so many setbacks and to not even get an interview in some cases. And that went on for a couple of months, and it was important for me that I didn't want to be too demoralized for that process. So I did stay positive. And
how did you stay positive, Murray? What did you do to stay positive?
Look, for me, exercise was a big outlet. So I used that time off to do a lot of exercise, and I keep on getting notifications on my app to say that your step counts down by 50% from 6 months ago, right? So I'm not walking on as much or running as much as what I was, but it's really about making sure that you're talking to people and reminding yourself that it's the market, it's not you. You've got a resume. You when you speak to people and you do get interviews, you make good progress. So it's a bit of a mental health battle thing, I think, to sort of battle those demons against yourself and to stay confident.
Mindset, right?
Mindset, yeah. And I've got that growth mindset. I really do think positively and sort of treat every experience as a learning opportunity. So even when I was getting setbacks or I was getting no's even from an interview point of view, I was asking for feedback. I was trying to figure out why, what was I missing on my resume? What did I not have quite right? So look, it was an interesting journey.
How long were you or how long were you actively on the market looking?
So probably really actively looking would have been 3 months, around 3 months.
And 3 months for a really strong candidate like yourself is long, right?
Yeah.
Because especially in sales and that with the kind of experience you've got, that's so it's a testament to the market and how unusual it is, because when you've got the experience you've got, and you've led teams, you've grown businesses, you get snapped up in what, a day, in a week, and
Yeah.
that's what your career has been all about in the past. So yeah, I mean, can you share a little bit about the salaries that were being discussed, given the fact that you're such a credible candidate out there? And I think we had this conversation, and you were quite taken back by some of the what the market was paying.
Yeah, look, before I get to that, let me take us back 3 years in time, right? So if we
Okay,
go back to 3 years ago, when it was a really candidate-driven market, you could have pretty much asked for any salary and you could negotiate the
100%.
salary. And I remember when I was looking for my last role runner and we were working together, I had I'd sort of been looking for a job for about 2 or 3 weeks, and then in the third week, I had 4 job offers in my inbox on Friday, and I had to make a choice between the four. And I could have taken one where the salary was exceptionally high, more money than I'd ever earned before in the past, or I could have taken a job that had really good brand and really good potential, which I ended up doing. So, but I could have named my price.
Was
Right?
one of them the offers we put out as well? Because I
One of
think
them was one. Yes, yeah, it
yes,
was.
because
Yep,
yeah.
yep.
Obviously, you rejected
I
high
did, yes,
offer.
yes, yes. And it wasn't, and
That's all
that
right.
wasn't a salary thing. That was more of it was more of a business and a brand
Yeah,
decision for
and
me.
and you've got to align. So brilliant. Okay,
Yes, but now fast forward to
not
now.
holding anything against you, Murray.
No,
No.
no, I know, I
No,
know.
I did lose out on my commission check, but what do you do? I'm still helping you get your brand out there. Kidding.
But look,
I'm just
fast
really
forward.
grateful to meet some great candidates along the way that you connect with personally, and I think that's what recruitment is all about. It's
Yes,
the relationships you build over years. So yeah.
absolutely. But look, if I think about the experience of me with salaries, and I won't name the companies, but there were some quite senior roles that I interviewed for, and then went through a couple of rounds of interviews and got to that pointy end of offer, salary, what are your expectations around things around OTE and those kinds of conversations. And it was pretty uncomfortable, if I'm being honest, because there were some pretty big brands, like quite large, very well-known brands, that your expectation based on the role description, based on the experience required, based on the level of responsibility within that role. Well, I'm talking about really high paying base salaries, plus with really high bonus and commission opportunities on top of that. But they just weren't there. I mean, I was experiencing roles where I was expecting upwards of $300,000 to $400,000 salary offers being offered
Yep.
$180,000, which
Yep.
was just
That's
yeah, it was crazy.
wow. Yeah. Insane. And I think we're seeing that a lot more now as well. Where would you think that the market's correcting itself to some extent? Where I mean, you being a sales leader, where you've hired sales professionals at that 120K base or 110K base, but technically you would think the salary aligning to the experience would probably be more around the 85 to 90. So you're looking at the 20-30% base
Yeah.
increments post COVID, without the actual ROI or the experience to warrant it. So did you see that at Smart, where you probably threw a lot of money out there in terms of with your hiring experiences?
Yeah, we did. And I think it went really far in one direction, where people were being overpaid and they were underqualified and underexperienced. And I think it's absolutely a correction, but I think it's gone a little bit too far if I look at what's being
Yeah.
in the market right now.
Yeah.
And my experience in when I was hiring people, we absolutely overpaid, and we offered some pretty look, I don't think they were crazy salaries, but they were above the expectation of what the role was. And even to the point where with some candidates that we hired, we were we were paying them more than they were bringing in. Right?
Yeah.
We were paying them a salary, and we weren't getting an ROI from a sales point of view. on them, but there wasn't really anything we could do. We just had to run it as a
Right.
loss.
It. Yeah. Yeah.
And just
And that's because of the talent shortage at the time. Because if there wasn't anyone at the seat in the seat, then there's no activity, and
correct.
and it's just a um, yeah, it's an yeah, it kind of all spirals down to the bottom line, and yeah, no, and did you see that when you were being interviewed? Can you share a little bit about the frustration you've had with recruiters? And I mean, look, that's it's great to talk to my colleagues out there as well, and
Yeah.
just give them some awareness around the fact that we've got a duty of care to our candidates. So, and also hiring managers, can you share some horror stories with us around?
Oh, there's so many. Look, I'm glad you said hiring managers because it's not just recruiters, right?
No,
It's
no,
hiring managers as well, and those people that are in HR and P&C that manage the whole recruitment process. Look,
100%.
the first bit of feedback I would say is make sure that you, even if it's an automated email, get back to every single candidate, right? Look, I probably sent off, I don't know, 50 to 60 plus applications during that period. And I probably
Less.
got 10 responses back from people, and none of them were a phone call. Unless I got an interview, I never got a phone call from anybody. And it was really frustrating. It was incredibly frustrating, in particular where I felt the role was written for me, right? And I'm looking
Oh,
at it, I'm thinking, God,
yeah.
I could do this in my sleep, right? So that was really, really frustrating. I think the second thing was if you think about the interview process and the timing of the interviews and the expectations around the interviews, it needs to be both beneficial for the candidate and for the hiring manager or the organization. And my experience was it was very much around the organization. And even as a candidate, you felt extremely underpowered in those situations to be able to not so necessarily demand something, but it was like, it's Monday, 9 o'clock, or there's no interview, right?
Mm.
There was no flexibility. So that was quite frustrating as well. The other big thing for me was the number of interviews.
Yeah,
I did,
that's increasing.
yeah. Look, and there was one really, really great opportunity that I had, which I didn't end up getting. It came down to me and one other really, really strong candidate who did get the job. But there was 8 rounds of interviews, including a couple of face-to-faces, a presentation. There was a meeting with the chairman of the organization. And so there was an incredible amount of time invested on my behalf when I
100%.
was actively looking for other roles it was time that I was willing to commit at the time, but 8 interviews was pretty intense. And then there was another example with, again, a really great brand, great organization, where I spent 2 days in their office, basically doing 2 days of unpaid work, where I was helping, basically trying to see if I could work with the team. I had to develop a strategy as part of the recruitment process and present that to the CEO and to the owner and to the board, the chairman of the board, and I didn't end up getting the role there either. So again, really heavy investment from a time point of view,
Oh,
an effort point of view
but I
for.
also feel, yeah, totally. But what is I mean, as a senior leader, I mean,
Mm.
do you feel that businesses are using this time as well to see what they can get out of really quality
Oh.
talent out there? I mean, it's terrible. I mean, this is opening a whole can of worms, right? And I'm all about controversy, but I do feel that someone with your level of experience and what you've
Mm.
done for businesses from a growth perspective, and I see this happening more now, and you're not the first one to bring it up, where there's a massive, this has never happened before, where there's been such a, I mean, they didn't really have the time because there was massive talent shortage, and now
Mm.
it's an employer market, so they're milking it. But what I'm trying to get at is it's free work. And is that even right? Because technically they could be using some of your ideas, because you may have done something amazing you wouldn't have got that far, and they wouldn't have you in their office for 2 days if they didn't see value in having you there. So
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, sorry, I'm just questioning the ethics around it.
Look, I think it's a really interesting point, right? Because for me at the time, I put a really significant amount of effort into that example where I was 2 days in the office and essentially redeveloped their sales strategy and their customer journey and, modeled
Wow.
what the outputs would be and presented it. And it was from my point of view, and maybe I'm looking through rose-colored glasses, but it was a compelling sales strategy. And it was, as much as I could do in 2 days, it was a pretty robust process with a realignment of how they interacted with their customers, their lead nurturing process, their marketing effectiveness. It was a big piece of work. And I remember when I presented it to them, and I was having a kind of quite a candid conversation with the owner of the organization. I said, look, even if you don't give me the job, if I'm not successful in this job, you should take this strategy because this is really going to take your business to the next level. And at the time, I thought that would be a sort of a positive thing for me to say to them because it would show intent of me really
Yeah.
putting effort into it. But they could have very well, and I would have been quite happy, and I hopefully they did, taken that strategy and implemented it and worked with their team to develop the sales process that I'd identified. But it's free work. It's like you're consulting within an organization and not getting paid for it.
Wow. Gosh. And it's, you know what, you're not the first candidate that's being very transparent about um the interview process. That's 8 interviews. I think I spoke to a candidate quite recently, and he said he's on his 10th round because it's a global organization, and he's got to go through, because obviously there's a lot of red tape and there's layers of senior leadership, and now he's talking to the vice president of something based in Sri Lanka, and but that never happened before, because usually they condense those interviews to 3 rounds, and 3 rounds I think is decent. That includes your presentation, you bring your top, but now they just is it just sussing out the market? Let's just see what's out there, and see what let's get some market insight. Let's get, everyone's got, but I don't know how they've got all that free time to do
I
that.
don't know either. I mean, look, I don't think they're taking a lot of candidates through to that process. And I know in that example, I was the only person and they chose not to go with me for, it could have been a salary thing. I'm not really sure. But the process of 8 interviews, there was another candidate that was going through that journey with me. And it was a intensive process. It was a
It's a
really,
battle.
well, yeah, it was. And
Yeah,
look, there was
totally.
psychometric testing, there was intelligence testing, there was mathematics, there was it was
Wow.
a, but it was a high profile role. It was a
Yeah,
really high
yeah,
profile role.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. Look, I think so. What do you think is realistic for that kind of role? I mean, what do you think is realistic when it comes to the number of interviews for that role that should have been right?
yeah, look, I think for a role like that, I think 8's probably too many. I think 5's the right level, and you need to get through that pre-qualification process,
Mm-hmm.
which is that initial conversation, and then I think
100%.
straight into the face to face. Right?
Yeah.
And I think if you had those 3 or 4 virtual meetings beforehand, you're just saying the same things to different people.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a bit of a waste of time. So I feel for a really senior role like that, 5 interviews of which 4, or even 3 face to face, I think is appropriate, and it should be first face to face initial interview, presentation, because I think a presentation is incredibly important in a case
Yeah.
study, and then that sort of final just to nut out any of those last nuances you might have questions on both sides about.
No, I think that sounds fair. But you're right. I mean, I think you were really open about sharing some of the challenges you've had, some of the challenges you've had around salaries,
Mm.
what, I mean, what do you think got you this role? I mean, obviously it could have been quite competitive as well, given the
Yeah,
market we're in. So if you could share with our audience a little bit about, you know, how you managed to kind of secure your current role, and what you've done as a candidate differently that they could potentially be adopting in their job search strategies.
yeah. So it's fascinating because the experience of the 8 interviews and the 2 days in the office was a juxtaposition to this role where I was contacted by a recruiter, and they said that they'd identified my profile and they wanted me to apply for this role. The process was an initial conversation. Basically, we've seen your LinkedIn profile, we want you to apply. It was then a 2-minute video where I had to play up,
Presentation. Yeah.
and I just had to get on a video and say, "Hi, my name is Murray, and this is my experience, and this is what I'll bring to the role." It was then a panel interview, face-to-face panel interview, and then it was an offer.
Wow.
It was
Okay.
incredibly short. It happened so quickly to the point where I actually requested another interview. So I said, hang on, this has gone too fast for me. I've still got some questions. It's great that you want to make me an offer, but I actually want to ask some more questions around the organization and around the role and expectation. Look, I think, and I got this feedback from the panel after the interview was that I guess my demeanor and my personality and my extroverted approach to that role and to that interview was unlike anything that they'd seen because it's an education role. I mean, if you think about traditional people that work in the education industry, they're quite reserved. They can be quite, they can be very not as vivacious as what my
Yeah.
personality is. And I think I walked in there and I told them that we were going to grow. I said, this is how we're going to do it. This is my experience and this is what I can bring to the role. And they hadn't seen a candidate like me. And also, I think I was quite unique from that point of view.
I mean, that goes to your that's an advantage for you. But I mean, if you're sharing some advice to candidates out there, you know, with how to make themselves stand out. I mean, did you got approached by a recruiter, right?
Yes.
Did you apply for the role or they found your profile? It was a headhunt.
It was a headhunt. Yes, correct.
See, that's different. That's very different because then it's like me contacting a specific profile based on the role and then pitching the candidate in. So that happens. And I think for your level of profile, I'm not surprised that it did. But I think it's the more active candidates out there that did you do anything on LinkedIn with your profile, like, branding wise, content and, because obviously you came up in some searches that the recruiter noticed your background. So, you have to be visible to be able to do that. So can you share maybe some insight around that?
Yeah, so I spent quite a lot of time optimizing my LinkedIn profile and my resume and cover letters and everything as well.
Did
And
you use SkillSyncer, the one that I shared with you?
I think I may have, yes. Yeah, I used a
Yeah.
couple of different tools. I read a whole bunch of blogs and information and spoke to recruiters and really played around with different keywords to help boost my ranking within LinkedIn, and did the same on resumes depending on the role. And look, I think at the end of the day, if you're using your LinkedIn as a tool, it's more about how you engage and interact with people and posts as opposed to what's in your static page. I think that's important. Don't get me wrong. Your experience, the way you write action-oriented bullet points within your profiles is important, as is your headline. But where I got more benefit, I think, and what it led to me being approached was me engaging with different groups and different individuals and writing quite insightful, experiential-based responses to things that were being posed and being quite active in groups and those kinds of things. And it helps build your profile as a thought leader. And if you're an individual who's quite strong in technology sales, for example, making sure that you're on those organizations where you want to work and interacting with those posts and thinking about how you can add value to the communication, to the different types of communities on LinkedIn.
Yeah, I think that makes a massive impact to your personal brand, but also, you're one step ahead of the other candidates that may not be as visible, especially in sales and marketing and those roles. You want to be a bit of a thought leader with your personal presence. So I think your network as well. I mean, you mentioned you spending a lot of time connecting with your network, getting constantly updating what your network shares with you and it's that whole curious mindset where you come across as a candidate that is constantly improving, not just their profile, but what they're doing with their resume, like the whole adopting SkillSyncer, getting your resume more ATS friendly. It's little things like that can make a real difference to your profile. So it's not, I mean, let's be honest, you applied for that many roles on Seek and on LinkedIn, but ultimately what actually got you your role was probably your presence on LinkedIn for a recruiter
Yes.
to see what value you can bring. So you must have had the right keywords. You must have, come across as a thought leader, and obviously that that's what she gravitated, or he gravitated towards, and that's what eventually was a headhunt. So I think for that senior level candidate, LinkedIn is definitely, should be a real focus from a presence perspective, which is what you've been a testament to. But I mean, is there anything else you'd like to share with candidates out there? I mean, you've given us you've been very transparent. It's been authentic, and I think you can. I can see a lot of candidates resonating with some of the challenges you faced, and I'm so happy that a great candidate like you managed to find work, and I had no doubt you would. But if candidates like yourself, Murray, and the caliber and experience you bring have those challenges, the candidates that may not be as strong, they're really struggling. So to be able, thank you for taking the time to share what you have.
Yeah, look, I think the first thing is about being resilient, right? As I, you can hear before, I said all the setbacks that I had, and it's really important to stay strong and stay resilient and stay focused on your core values, right?
Mm-hmm.
And for salespeople in particular, it's easy to ride the highs, but it's also, you ride the lows as well. So I would say stay focused on what those highs are and what those opportunities are. Absolutely use your network, reach out to people, get on the phone, go for coffees. I probably drank 1,000 coffees in the 3 or 4 months that I was looking for work, and I was constantly traveling into the city and to different locations to meet up with people, sometimes multiple times a day, just to have a chat and to get your name out there. And that it led to quite a few opportunities, which was really, really good. Look, I think it's at the end of the day, you need to optimize the way you present yourself from a resume point of view, from a LinkedIn profile point of view, cover letter point of view, and don't do what I did when I first started and do the spray and pray, but be really tailored, right? So really focus in on opportunities that suit your experience and suit your profile. They could be roles that are just sort of that one step above, but then talk about how you're trying to build your career and leverage your experience to grow within an organization. Because, for me as a hiring manager now, I'm not just looking for somebody who I know might be able to do the job. I'm looking for somebody who's going to be able to take that role to the next level as we grow the business that we're in. So be really positive in your approach and your language, and make sure that throughout the process, you're staying confident and you're presenting yourself in the very, very best way possible. Even that's if it's a phone call, just find somewhere quiet. If you can't find somewhere quiet, make sure you call them back somewhere where you can. I remember taking a call when I was picking up my kids from school from a recruiter, and I regretted it, right? Because it was an awful experience for them and it was a bad experience for me because I couldn't hear everything. And ultimately, I didn't even get a call back on that one. But again, I would have said, I'm sorry, I can't speak right now. Can I call you back in 10 minutes? Rather than trying to have that conversation with them. So just be pragmatic in your approach and definitely don't give up.
No, thank you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time to do this, Murray. And just for the candidates out there, Murray mentioned being really tailored with your approach. We have created a spreadsheet tool that to help you with being more structured, so you can keep tabs of the role you've applied for. You can make sure you've connected with the hiring managers, and there's a process there that we as recruiters suggest, and I'll share that when you do listen to this, these insightful golden nuggets by Murray. And we must thank him for his time, because I think we've taken up his entire lunch break. So I'm gonna head, Murray, and let you go and have your lunch.
Hey, right. Thank you so much. And good luck to everybody out there. And yes, good luck. Thanks so much.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye-bye.